She did not cry when the chain cut into her wrists. She did not beg when men laughed. She only lifted her chin and stared straight at the one man who wasn't smiling. Everyone else saw trouble. He saw something refusing to break. When the auctioneer called her a wild thing, she smiled with blood on her lips. Not because it was funny. Because fear had already lost its hold on her, and when the quiet rancher stepped forward and named his price, the whole street fell silent. The question was no longer who would own her. It was whether she would survive him. They had dragged her onto the platform like a prize animal, hands rough, voices cruel. The chain around her wrists rattled each time she moved, though she stood still now, tall despite the bruises blooming along her arms. Dust clung to her torn dress. Dried blood marked the corner of her mouth. Her eyes, sharp and amber, scanned the crowd as if measuring every threat. The auctioneer cleared his throat and raised his gavel. He spoke loudly, proudly, like a man selling a story instead of a human life. He called her dangerous, said she lived like a beast in the canyons, said she fought like the devil when cornered. Laughter followed, some curious, some eager, none kind. She said nothing. Silence had kept her alive before. At the edge of the crowd stood Caleb Rourke. He had come to town for supplies, flour, coffee, fence nails, nothing more. At 37, his face carried the quiet wear of a man who had buried too much and learned not to speak of it. His hat was pulled low, his jaw tight. He watched without moving. Bids began low, too low. Men joked as they raised the price. They spoke of breaking her spirit, of teaching her obedience. Each word landed like a slap, but she did not flinch. She had learned long ago that giving men fear only fed them. One bidder stepped closer, big, red-faced, drunk on confidence. When he grinned at her, she spat at his boots. The crowd roared. A deputy struck her without warning. Her head snapped sideways. Pain flashed white. She tasted fresh blood and laughed softly through it. That laughter unsettled them more than screams ever could. Caleb's hands curled into fists. The auctioneer asked for higher bids. The red-faced man raised his hand again, boasting loudly. He talked about his ranch, about stalls and ropes, about what he would do to tame her. That was when Caleb stepped forward. His boots sounded loud on the wooden steps. Slow, steady. The noise cut through the crowd like a blade. People turned. Whispers followed him. He was known, not feared, respected. A man who kept to his land and his word. $100, Caleb said. The laughter died instantly. The auctioneer blinked. He thought he had misheard. You say? 100, Caleb repeated, calm, flat, certain. The red-faced man cursed and shouted, but Caleb did not look at him. He only looked at her. Up close, he saw the truth others missed. The way her shoulders stayed, squared, despite exhaustion. The way her eyes never dropped. Fear lived there, yes, but it did not rule her. What ruled her was will. The auctioneer wasted no time. Money changed hands fast when greed was afraid it might lose. The gavel came down. The sound echoed too loudly. Sold. The word hit her harder than the blow had. Caleb climbed the steps and stood beside her. He could feel the crowd pressing in, hungry for the next act. He spoke to the deputy, not to her. Take the chains off. The deputy hesitated. She's dangerous. So are most things when cornered, Caleb said. His voice did not rise. The chains fell. She rubbed her raw wrists but did not step back. Instead, she lifted her gaze to him fully now. You didn't buy me, she said. Her voice was rough, but steady. I'm no man's property. I know, Caleb replied. That surprised her. He gestured toward the street, where the red-faced man and others waited like vultures. You can walk with me, or you can stay here and see who bids next. That's the truth of it. She looked past him, at the men, at the town, at everything that had taught her what mercy looked like. Then she looked back at him. I won't kneel, she said. Good, Caleb answered. I don't need kneeling. They walked away together, not touching, not close, but side by side. At his wagon he paused. Can you ride? She almost smiled, better than most. Quote. He nodded once and pointed to the mare tied at the back. She's steady, long ride ahead. She mounted with easy grace, despite her injuries. The crowd watched in uneasy silence as Caleb swung onto his own horse. When someone shouted a warning about wildness never being cured, Caleb did not turn around. Not trying to cure it, he said. Some things aren't meant to be. They rode out of town as the sun dipped low, dust rose behind them, Willow Creek shrank into nothing. For a long time neither spoke. The desert opened around them, wide, honest, dangerous. The kind of place that told no lies. She rode, straight-backed, alert, always watching the horizon. He noticed everything, said nothing. When night finally crept in, he slowed his horse. We'll stop soon. There's water ahead. She studied him carefully, waiting for a trap that never came. You can run, he added quietly. I won't stop you. She considered that. Really considered it. Then she looked forward again. Not tonight. Caleb nodded. That was enough. Above them, the first stars appeared. Two strangers rode on through the dark, both carrying scars the desert could not see. Neither knew what waited at the end of the trail. Only that something had already begun. The fire cracked once and settled. Neither of them spoke. She sat across from him with her knees drawn close, hands wrapped around a tin cup she had not yet lifted. The flames painted her face in soft orange and deep shadow, turning the bruises into something almost gentle. Almost. Caleb pretended to watch the fire, but every instinct he had was tuned to her movements. The way she listened to the dark. The way she held herself ready, even while resting. Water's clean, he said at last. Horses are settled. She nodded. No thanks, no relief, just acknowledgement. They had reached the cottonwood grove an hour after sundown. A narrow spring cut through the rocks, hidden unless you knew where to look. Caleb had camped here many times. Safe enough. Quiet enough. Still, he had placed his rifle within reach and chosen a seat where his back touched a tree. Old habits never died. They only waited. She finally drank, slow, careful, like someone who expected it to be taken away. Why? She asked suddenly. The word landed heavy in the space between them. Caleb did not pretend to misunderstand. Why? What? Why you paid that much? Her eyes stayed on him now, sharp, searching. Men don't do that for nothing. He rolled the cup between his palms, thinking. Truth mattered with people like her. Lies were easy to smell. Because I was tired of watching, he said, and because I could. That's not the whole reason. No, he agreed, it's not. She waited, silence stretched. The fire popped again. I've seen what happens when nobody steps in. Caleb continued. And I didn't like the look in those men's eyes. Her jaw tightened. They all look like that. Some do, he said. Some hide it better. She looked away then, toward the dark beyond the firelight. You expect me to work for you. Yes. You expect obedience. No. That earned him a glance. Quick, uncertain. You work, Caleb said evenly. Same as anyone on my land. You eat, you sleep, you decide the rest. Quote. And if I leave? Then you leave. She studied him like he was a puzzle missing pieces. You won't chase. I won't. Won't lock doors. No locks. Won't touch me. Caleb's voice hardened just enough to matter. Never. Something in her posture shifted. Not trust. Not yet. But the knife edge eased. The wind moved through the cottonwoods, whispering overhead. Coyotes called somewhere far off. She listened, head tilted slightly, like she understood their language better than his. You know them, he said. She nodded. They don't pretend to be something else. They ate in silence. Hard bread, jerky, peaches from a can he had saved without knowing why. She ate fast, then slower, then finally stopped. Hunger fought with caution. Habit won halfway. When Caleb stood to bank the fire, she stiffened. He noticed. "I'll take first watch," he said. "You sleep." "I don't sleep." "Rest then." She hesitated. "You turn your back on me." "Yes." "That's foolish." "Maybe." He moved away from the fire and sat with his rifle across his knees, facing the dark. He did not look back. He could feel her eyes on him, measuring risk, weighing opportunity. Minutes passed, then longer. Finally, he heard her shift. The soft sound of her settling onto the bedroll. Still tense, still ready, but resting. Hours slid by. The stars wheeled slowly overhead. Caleb watched shadows move and thought about choices. About how a simple supply trip had turned into this. He did not regret it. That surprised him. Near dawn, she stirred. A sharp breath, a whispered sound, half-formed. Nightmare. She sat up abruptly, chest heaving. "You're safe," he said quietly, without turning. It took her a moment to believe where she was. When she spoke, her voice was stripped bare. "I don't dream nice things." "Most people don't." The sky began to lighten, pale gray, then blue. They broke camp quickly, efficient, no wasted motion. She moved like someone used to living out of a pack. When Caleb handed her the reins of the mare, she took them without comment. They rode as the sun rose, shadows stretching long across the desert floor. The land changed slowly. Rock to scrub, scrub to open range. Hard country, honest country. By midday she asked, "Who else lives there?" "My ranch?" Caleb nodded. "3 hands. Tom Brennan runs things when I'm gone. Miguel Santana. Billy Crawford, young, still learning." "And women?" Quote. "No." She absorbed that. "They'll expect things." "They'll expect work. And if they don't, they won't stay." That answer satisfied her more than reassurance ever could. By late afternoon, they crested a low ridge. Below them, the valley opened wide. Buildings crouched against the land. Barn. Corrals. A stone house worn smooth by time and weather. She reined in her horse, eyes scanning every detail, routes, distances, high ground. "That's it?" she asked. "That's it." "It's not a cage." "No," he said. "It's just land." They descended slowly. The sound of hooves drew attention. A man straightened near the corral. Another stepped from the barn. Caleb raised a hand in greeting. "This is Elena," he said when they reached them. "She'll be staying." Tom Brennan studied her without staring. Miguel nodded politely. Billy forgot his manners entirely and stared until Tom cuffed him lightly. "She works like everyone else," Caleb added. Elena said nothing. She dismounted last. Stayed close to her horse. Caleb showed her a small room off the kitchen. Private. A door to the outside. A lock she could use if she wished. "You can leave it open," he said. "Or not." She touched the doorframe. "Solid. Real. I'll work," she said. "I know." As evening fell, she sat at the edge of the porch, watching the ranch settle into night. The sounds were different here. Not wild. Not tame. Something in between. Caleb joined her, keeping distance. "Supper's ready." She hesitated, then stood. Inside, she sat at the table, ate slowly, listened. No one pushed. No one asked. When she finally looked up at Caleb, something new flickered in her eyes. Not trust, but possibility. Elena did not miss the work bell the next morning. She was already awake when it rang. The sky was barely light. Frost clung to the ground in thin white patches, and her breath fogged the air as she stepped outside. She stood still for a moment, listening. Horses shifting, wood creaking, men moving with the quiet rhythm of habit. No shouting, no orders barked for show, just work beginning. Caleb watched from the barn doorway. He said nothing. Approval did not need to be spoken. Tom handed her a bucket and nodded toward the well. "Start there." She took it without comment and walked off. Her hands were still sore from the chains. Her body ached from the ride. She did not slow. By noon, her palms were blistered and split. She noticed, ignored it. The ranch tested her in small, relentless ways. Laundry and cold water. Mending fence wire that bit back. Carrying feed sacks that strained already tired muscles. No one went easy on her. No one went hard either. The balance confused her more than cruelty ever had. At midday, she nearly broke. Tom asked her to help with washing clothes. The tub. The soap. The wringer. Her body locked tight. "I don't know how," she said through clenched teeth. Tom shrugged. "Then I'll show you." No mockery, no impatience, just a simple statement. He demonstrated once, slowly. She copied him, movements sharp and aggressive at first. Then steadier. When she finished, the clothes were cleaner than necessary. The tub soaked. Her jaw trembled with effort she refused to name. That night, Caleb assigned her to help with supper. "I won't be a servant," she snapped. "No servants here," he replied. "We take turns." I said no. The kitchen went quiet. Tom shifted. Billy froze. Miguel lowered his eyes. Caleb sat down. "Then we don't eat," he said. The clock ticked. The fire hissed softly. Hunger crept in. Billy's stomach growled loud enough to echo. Tom sighed and leaned back. Miguel closed his eyes like a man settling in for a wait. Elena stared at them. At Caleb. At the stubborn calm in his posture. "Fine," she snapped. "But I don't know how to cook either." Miguel smiled gently. "I help." They worked together. Beans, salt pork, cornbread. Simple, edible. When Elena slammed the plates down, Caleb only said, "Thank you." Something shifted then, not trust, but the ground stopped moving beneath her feet. The first real crack came with the storm. It rolled in fast, wind screaming, sand biting skin, visibility gone in seconds. Elena panicked, broke away from Tom's guiding hand and ran blind into the dust. Caleb found her curled against a rock an hour later, shaking, bleeding from windburn. He did not scold, did not lecture. He wrapped his coat around her and brought her home. "No shame in needing help," he said as he cleaned her face. She did not argue. After that, the horses became her refuge. Billy struggled with a young Mustang. Rope too tight. Movements too sharp. The horse fought back. "You're doing it wrong," Elena called. Billy bristled. "You think you can do better?" She vaulted the fence without a word. Her voice changed when she spoke to the horse. Low, soft, familiar. Within minutes, the animal stood trembling but still. "You have to listen," she said. "Fear makes things wild." Caleb watched from the barn. Their eyes met. Understanding passed between them without words. Weeks passed. Her hands toughened. Her posture eased. She learned to cook, to mend, to read the ledgers by lamplight at night. One evening, she chose to sit beside Caleb at the table. That night, Miguel spoke of loss. Tom shifted uncomfortably. Elena surprised them all by telling the truth of her past. Raiders, capture, escape. 7 years alone. No one interrupted. Later, on the porch, she asked Caleb about his ghosts. He told her about his wife, about being too late, about burying her beneath a tree she loved. They stood in silence. Pain recognized pain. "You still think about running," he said. "Yes, that's allowed." She nodded. Then riders came at dawn. 15 men, torches, Jake Morrison at the front. They demanded her, called her stolen property. Elena stepped forward, knife in hand. "I won't be taken," she said. Caleb stood beside her. "So you won't," he replied. The ranch stood together, rifles ready, fear balanced by resolve. Jake retreated with threats and promises of return. When it was over, Elena's hands shook. "You'd die for me," she said. Caleb shook his head. "I'd live standing." 3 days later, the town called a hearing. Willow Creek filled with voices. Accusations. Jake's lies rang loud. Elena spoke calmly, told her truth, took responsibility for surviving. Caleb stood for her without claiming her. The judge ruled in her favor. She rode back to the ranch, free in the eyes of the law. That night, she sat beside Caleb again. "I'm still wild," she said. He smiled faintly. "Good." She stayed. Peace came quietly. Too quietly. The days after the hearing settled into a careful rhythm, like the ranch itself was holding its breath. Elena worked harder than before, not to prove anything now, but because the work steadied her. Sunrise to dusk. Fence lines. Horses. Meals shared without tension. Laughter came once in a while. It startled her every time. Caleb watched from a distance. He did not crowd her. Did not claim victories that weren't his. Trust, he had learned, grew best when left room to breathe. One afternoon, Elena stood at the kitchen window, seasoning a pan the way Miguel had taught her, when the sound of a single rider reached her ears. Slow. Unhurried. No threat. Still, her spine stiffened. "Just one," she murmured. Billy looked up. "Friend." Quote, "I don't know." She stepped onto the porch as the rider stopped at the gate. A woman dismounted, hands trembling as she removed her hat, dark hair pulled back. Older than Elena remembered. Thinner. But the posture was unmistakable. "Elena," the woman called. Her voice broke. "Is that really you?" The name hit like a blow. Rosa. Elena crossed the yard without thinking. They collided, arms wrapping tight, breath stolen by sobs neither could stop. For a long moment, the world narrowed to that embrace. 7 years of fear and grief poured out between them. "I thought you were dead," Rosa whispered. "They told me you were dead." "I thought you were," Elena managed. "The house was burning. I'm here," Rosa said firmly. "I'm here." Caleb appeared near the barn, then stopped when he saw them. He did not interrupt. Neither did Tom or Miguel. Some reunions demanded silence. Inside, coffee was poured. Chairs pulled close. Rosa told her story in halting pieces. How she had been away during the raid. How strangers took her in. How she married to survive and buried that life when the man died. How she never stopped asking about a wild girl in the canyons. "And then I heard about a trial," Rosa said, "about a woman who wouldn't bow." Elena laughed through tears. "That sounds like me." Caleb listened from the edge of the room. When Rosa turned to him, eyes searching, he met her gaze steadily. "You're safe here," he said. "Both of you." Rosa studied him, then nodded. "I believe that." That night, after Rosa settled into a small spare room, Elena knocked on Caleb's office door. He was bent over ledgers, lamplight cutting sharp lines across his face. "Come in," he said. She stood there, unsure. That was new. "Thank you," she said finally, "for letting her stay." "She's family," he replied. The word hung between them. Elena looked away. "I never thought I'd see her again." "Family has a way of finding its way back," Caleb said. She moved closer, then stopped. "You stood for me in town. You didn't have to. I wanted to." "Why?" Caleb closed the ledger, took a breath. "Because you mattered before you ever proved anything. Because I won't watch good people be ground down again." She searched his face, found no ownership there. "Only care." For the first time, she reached out and touched his hand. Brief, real. Then winter came. It arrived without warning. Wind howling like something alive. Snow driven sideways. Caleb rode out to check the eastern pasture and did not return. Elena knew before anyone spoke. Tom was already pulling on his coat when she reached the barn. He went out before the storm turned. "I'm going," she said. "You can't see 10 feet." "I don't need to," she replied. She took her mare and disappeared into the white. The storm tried to kill her. Snow cut her skin raw. Wind stole her breath. She followed instinct. Land, memory. The way the world felt beneath the horse's hooves. She found the cattle first. Then, redemption, standing guard. Caleb lay in the snow, dazed, ankle twisted badly, blood frozen at his temple. "Stay with me," she ordered, voice fierce with fear. She got him onto the horse, sent him home. Then she turned back to the herd. Hours blurred. Pain vanished. There was only motion, command, will. She drove the cattle the way storms drove everything else. Relentless, unyielding. When the ranch lights finally appeared, she barely remembered dismounting. Caleb was alive, splinted, wrapped in blankets. "You shouldn't have come," he said weakly. She laughed once. "You shouldn't have gone." The herd was saved. The ranch would live. After the storm broke, they stood on the porch together, watching sunlight turn the snow to fire. "I thought I was going to die," Caleb said quietly. She met his eyes. "So did I. Didn't change what had to be done." He turned fully toward her. "Marry me." The words stunned the cold from her bones. "I won't cage you," he continued. "I won't tame you. I want to stand with you. That's all." She studied him, this man who had offered work instead of chains, space instead of fear, choice instead of command. "Yes," she said softly, "but I keep my knives." He smiled, wide and unguarded. "I'd worry if you didn't." They told the others that night. Laughter, whiskey, tears. Later, when the house slept, Elena lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The future felt strange, bright, dangerous in a new way. She wasn't running anymore. She was choosing. And that choice scared her more than any storm ever had. The wedding was simple. That mattered more than anything. No lace, no crowd. Just clear sky, cold air, and people who had chosen each other without needing witnesses. Tom stood stiff and proud beside Caleb. Miguel murmured a blessing half in Spanish, half in prayer. Rosa cried openly and did not apologize for it. Elena wore a plain dress Rosa had altered by lamplight. No veil, no flowers. Her hair was braided back, practical and strong. When she stood beside Caleb, her back was straight, her chin lifted. Not defiant. Certain. When Caleb took her hand, she squeezed once, grounding him, reminding them both this was real. They spoke few words. Promises were not dressed up. They were spoken like work orders and truths. "I won't own you," Caleb said. "I won't run unless I choose to," Elena answered. That was enough. Life did not soften after the vows. If anything, it tested them harder. Spring came late and angry. Water ran scarce. Calves were lost. Fences needed rebuilding. Markets dipped without warning. Some mornings, Elena woke from old nightmares, heart racing, body already ready to flee. Caleb learned when to hold her and when to step back. He learned that love did not mean fixing. It meant standing. Elena learned that staying was not weakness, that choosing the same place twice took more courage than running ever had. The trouble came back with dust on the horizon. Jake Morrison did not forget humiliation. He did not forgive defiance. Men like him never did. The first sign was a burned fence line. Then, a poisoned trough. Then a rider watching from a ridge, far enough away to deny intent. "They're testing us," Tom said grimly. Elena felt the old pull in her bones, the urge to disappear, to protect by absence. "I can leave," she said to Caleb one night. "Take Rosa, go back to the canyons. He'll lose interest." Caleb looked at her steadily. "And lose you?" Quote, "I don't want you hurt because of me." His voice stayed calm, but firm. "You are not the cause. He is." She did not argue. She hated that he was right. The attack came just before dawn. Shots cracked through the stillness. Horses screamed. Flames leapt where hay had been stacked too close to the barn. Elena was on her feet before the first shout. Knife in hand. Boots half laced. They moved as one. No panic. no wasted motion. Tom and Billy guarded the stock. Miguel covered the house. Caleb took position near the corral. Elena climbed to the roof with the field glasses. Her eyes cut through the dark. 4 riders, she called. Jake's one of them. Caleb's jaw set, warned them off. She fired a single shot into the dirt, far enough to miss, close enough to warn. Jake laughed from the shadows. His voice carried like rot. Still playing rancher haze? Still hiding behind the wild thing? Elena felt the insult roll off her. It had lost its power. She's my wife, Caleb called back, and you're trespassing. Gunfire answered. The exchange was brief but violent. One man fell screaming when Tom's shot found its mark. Another rider fled outright. Jake lingered longest, fury blinding him. Elena saw him raise his rifle toward Caleb's position. She did not think. She fired. Jake went down hard, screaming in pain, clutching his shoulder. His remaining men dragged him away, leaving curses and blood behind. Silence followed. Heavy, shaking. Caleb climbed onto the porch roof with her after it was over. His hands trembled as he checked her for wounds. "I'm fine," she said. "You?" He nodded, then pulled her close, tight, unashamed. "You chose us," he said into her hair. "Yes," she answered. "I keep choosing." The law came this time, slowly, reluctantly, but it came. Jake Morrison was arrested weeks later for armed assault and conspiracy. Too many witnesses, too many grudges, too many men tired of his kind of rule. When the dust settled, the ranch breathed easier. Summer followed, hard, honest, relentless. Elena grew into her place without losing herself. She still rode the high ground, still listened for danger, still slept with a knife within reach. But she laughed more now, sat longer at the table, let Rosa brush her hair some evenings without flinching. Caleb watched her in those moments. Quiet, grateful. A man who knew how close he'd come to losing something before he ever truly had it. One night, long after the others slept, Elena sat on the porch steps, staring at the stars. Caleb joined her. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. "The wild?" She considered. "I am the wild." He smiled. "I don't miss being alone," she added. She rested her head briefly against his shoulder. Just a moment. Enough. The desert stretched endless and unchanged around them. But something within it had shifted. Something had taken root where only survival once lived. And Elena knew now, deep in her bones, that freedom did not always mean running. Sometimes it meant standing your ground. The desert bloomed late that year. Stubborn flowers pushed through cracked earth, small and defiant, as if the land itself had learned something from Elena. Summer passed into fall without bloodshed. That alone felt like a miracle. Jake Morrison was gone now, hauled away in irons to answer for more than one crime. Men like him rarely fell because of a single woman. They fell because time finally ran out on their cruelty. Elena did not think about him much anymore. That chapter had closed the moment she stopped living in fear of his shadow. The ranch breathed easier. Work continued. Always work. Cattle to move. Repairs to make. Accounts to balance. Elena learned the rhythms of ownership without ever feeling owned. She rode fence lines with Caleb at dawn, sat with Miguel in the evenings, learning stories older than the land beneath them, teased Billy when he burned biscuits, argued with Tom about the best way to set posts. She belonged. Fully. Fiercely. Some nights, the past still found her. She would wake stiff and silent, heart racing, eyes scanning corners that held nothing but lamplight and stone walls. Caleb never asked questions in those moments. He simply reached for her hand if she allowed it, or sat nearby if she didn't. Both were enough. One evening, as autumn settled in, Rosa stood at the kitchen table with fabric spread before her. "You'll need a proper dress," she said, pretending this was practical and not emotional. Elena raised an eyebrow. "I already married him." "Yes, but you didn't celebrate," Rosa replied. "You survived. Now you get to live." The celebration came quietly. No town. No speeches. Just the ranch family gathered beneath the cottonwoods where Caleb once camped on his ride home. Lanterns glowed. Food filled the long table. Laughter moved easily now. Elena stood and watched it all for a moment before joining. The sound still surprised her. Happiness often did. Later, as the fire burned low, she slipped away to the edge of the light. The desert stretched wide and familiar beyond the glow. The same land that had once hidden her now simply existed beside her. Caleb found her there. "You disappear like that," he said gently, "and I start counting." She smiled faintly. "Old habits." He stood with her, shoulder to shoulder. No need for more. "I used to think surviving was the hardest thing," Elena said after a while. "Turns out, letting myself stay is harder." "And you're doing it anyway," Caleb replied. "Yes," she said, "every day." Winter returned, but softer this time. No blizzards, no near deaths, just cold nights and shared blankets. The ranch endured. The cattle thrived. The house filled with small signs of a life, lived forward instead of back. One morning, Elena stood on the porch, watching frost melt under rising sun. Caleb joined her, coffee steaming between them. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "That day in town?" He didn't answer right away. He looked at the land, at the barn, at her. "No," he said. "I regret all the days before it." She nodded. That felt right. Months later, spring returned again. This time, Elena noticed something different. A heaviness that wasn't fear. A tiredness that didn't fade. Rosa noticed too. Caleb knew before she said a word. When Elena finally told him, she expected panic. Or disbelief. Or questions she didn't have answers for. Instead, he sat down slowly, breathed once, then laughed. A soft, stunned sound. "You're sure? Quote?" She nodded. He reached for her, careful like she might vanish. "You don't have to be afraid," he said. "I'm not," she replied honestly, "just aware." The months that followed tested her in new ways. Her body changed, slowed. The wildness shifted, not disappeared. She rode less but watched more. Planned, guided, learned that strength could look like patience. On a clear summer night, as cicadas sang and the air held warm and still, Elena brought a child into the world with grit and fury and a refusal to break. Caleb held her hand the entire time. When it was over, when the small, red-faced miracle cried strong and loud, Elena laughed through tears. "She's fierce," Rosa said. "She's ours," Caleb whispered. Elena looked down at the child resting against her chest. This tiny thing born of a woman who had once sworn never to be caged, never to belong. "I won't tame you," she murmured, "but I'll teach you how to stand." Years later, people would tell the story wrong. They would say a rancher tamed a wild girl, that he saved her, that he changed her. Elena knew better. She had chosen the work, chosen the land, chosen love without surrender. She had ridden straight into his heart, yes, but he had walked patiently and humbly into hers. And together they built a life that did not cage the wild. It honored it. If you felt this tale in your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Archives of the Wild West, where every story rides through the dust, the danger, and the kind of love that never dies. See you in the next tale, partner.